Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our second Ask an Expert series webinar. This webinar is created by TeamGrowNL and Connector NL with the St. John's Board of Trade. My name is Tanya Heath. I'm with TeamGrowNL, and we are an initiative that aims to help local businesses meet their human resources needs by providing key information regarding immigration and the attraction of expatriate Newfoundlander and Labradorians living abroad. And with us today, we have Shanna Mugford and Ashley Noseworthy. They are from Connector NL with the St. John's Board of Trade. Connector NL is a program that helps individuals that are new to the provincial workforce grow their professional network and connect with career opportunities. So this series will allow industry experts and employers to engage with job seekers, hopefully like yourselves, that are interested in working in various sectors of Newfoundland and Labrador. Today we'll be focusing on the environmental and the clean tech industry, and we have Kieran Hanley and Ashley Noseworthy with us today, and I'm just going to briefly introduce them before they get started. So Kieran is the Executive Director of the Newfoundland and Labrador Environmental Industry Association, where he joined in January of 2012 in a communications and policy development role, and has been the Executive Director since 2016. NEIA is a not-for-profit association of businesses that promotes the development of clean technology and the growth of the green economy in Newfoundland and Labrador. In 2007, Kieran completed a Bachelor of Commerce from Dalhousie University with a major in international business. He acquired a certificate in economic development from the University of Waterloo in 2016 and graduated with an MBA from Cape Breton University in 2019. He was certified in 2017 as a Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator. He is currently the Vice President of the Economic Development Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. So thank you so much, Kieran, for joining us today. And moving on now to Ashley Noseworthy. She's the President and CEO of Edgewise Environmental. And this is Canada's first environmental consultancy dedicated to marine mammal observation, seabird observation, and acoustic monitoring training. She holds a Master of Science in International Marine Environmental Consultancy from Newcastle University in the UK, and a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Memorial University of Newfoundland. She has over a decade of global offshore experience working in a variety of environmental roles, and has over 12 years experience working and volunteering in the areas of marine mammal husbandry, marine mammals physiology, and cognition. She is an experienced aviation, offshore, and sea survival instructor. And Ashley currently sits on the Board of Directors for NEIA and the Executive Committee for the Marine Mammal Observer Association. So thank you, Ashley. Thanks both of you guys for being here today. So I'll just run through how the session will work today, so you're aware. Kieran and Ashley will both speak and do a small presentation for about 10 minutes each. Then I will pass it off to Shanna from Connector NL to take you through a question and answer period. So during the presentations, if you have a question pop up, you can type them into the Q&A box down below, or directly in the chat box, and you can directly ask questions in the participant list. And then we'll get to those in the period afterwards. So thanks everyone for being here today. We're excited to get started. So I will get started with Kieran.
All right, well, thanks, Tanya. Appreciate the introduction, and appreciate thanks to Connector NL and TeamGrowNL for giving us the opportunity to speak today. I watched the last session about technology, and I noticed that Paul Preston was wearing this exact same shirt, and I saw it in my closet, and I said, I'm going to wear the same thing. So that's a challenge to future presenters to try and find the exact same shirt. I'm going to share my screen and present a few slides because despite the shirt, I think that the slides are a little bit prettier. Here we go. Can everyone see that? Is that good there, Tanya?
Yep, you're all good. I can see it there.
All right. So Tanya talked a little bit about who NEIA is, the Newfoundland and Labrador Environmental Industry Association. Essentially, we're a group of businesses that promotes the development of clean tech and the growth of the green economy in this province. So what does that mean? I think it's helpful to know what we do before I talk about jobs and whatnot. As an organization, we help startup companies, we help entrepreneurs find and grow their businesses from day one. We help established businesses become more productive, more competitive in what they do. We help companies conduct research and development towards creation of innovative new products or processes or technologies. We help businesses explore international businesses opportunities typically through exporting their product or service. Really important in a small province like Newfoundland and Labrador. We talk to our businesses from day one about getting off the island or beyond Labrador. We help our professionals access training and development opportunities. And we also advocate on behalf of our members with respect to any issues that they're experiencing with government. So that's a little bit about what we do. As an organization, we have about 150 corporate members. They vary significantly in size. They can be a one-person operation to companies that actually employ hundreds of people. They're very different in the activities they engage in, ranging from the developers of technology to service providers. And they're active in all corners of our economy, from oil and gas to mining, aquaculture, and so on. Whatever's in our economy here in this province, we're active in it, or our members are active in it. For the purposes of this discussion, I think it's helpful to divide our membership into three general categories. And these aren't official by any means, just to give you a sense of who our members are. Industry service providers are businesses that are really entrenched in the supply chain. So they're providing our industries, whether it be offshore oil and gas, mining, forestry, with products or service that are environmental in nature. So that could be oil spill response in oil and gas, environmental monitoring and mining, organics management in aquaculture, or the management of sustainable wood cutting, for example, in forestry. So it really encapsulates a whole wide variety of activities. And then there's the technology developers. And this would be the set of companies that were really discussed in the last session that Connector NL had. In fact, Misa, Josh, who spoke, was one of our members. So these are people that are developing, or companies that are developing new products, new services from Newfoundland and Labrador that aren't necessarily tied to one industry in particular. So I won't get into detail on what those companies are, because I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then there's the environmental service providers. A little bit harder to define here, but I think it's that group of companies that are involved in providing the services that municipalities and construction companies need: waste management, wastewater management, remediation, water quality, drinking water quality, and so forth. So I think just understanding that there's different areas of, I guess, clean tech and environmental companies will be helpful as you look for what the opportunities may be from a career perspective. And just to give you a sense of the size of each of these components, those that provide services to industry, probably the largest component of our membership and the industry in this province. But it does ebb and flow with the degree of activity. So if there's a lot of mining activity, for example, then there's going to be more opportunities from a career perspective. But conversely, if there is a drop in activity, then there will also be a drop in opportunity for jobs. Then there's the tech developers who have really weathered the COVID-19 storm and the oil price drop, the economic challenges really, really well, relatively speaking. And they are, we're seeing more and more of these companies making up our membership. And there's more and more opportunities associated with those types of companies. And then the environmental service providers, it's been fairly consistent because the needs, I guess, from towns and cities and whatnot are fairly stable over time. But it does rely, of course, on general economic activity. Globally, we're seeing a lot more importance being placed on environmental sustainability. You might be familiar with the Paris Agreement that was formed in 2015 by over 100 countries worldwide. There's an increased desire for countries and jurisdictions to achieve net zero carbon emissions, and in fact our province committed to this just about a month ago by 2050. So all of that means there's an increased demand for products, services, and expertise related to environment, sustainability, climate change, clean tech, or what I guess you could generally call the green job. So it's important to think about what the green job is in Newfoundland and Labrador. In many places, it's associated, say, with the construction or maintenance of wind turbines, solar panels, because that's where a lot of the green activity is in other places. And there is some of that here in Newfoundland and Labrador, but most of the green jobs are going to be related to what I talked about previously, either technology-based companies or companies that are really tied into our natural resource sectors. So when it comes to industry service providers, there's a wide variety of different jobs that can be in this space, from engineers to technicians to technologists to auditors to hydrologists. A heavy focus on science typically, but if you apply all of these different types of jobs to all of the various industries that I talked about, there's a wide variety of different things that one could do in the sector. When it comes to technology developers, this slide might look familiar to the slide you saw in the last presentation if you took part, because these are the same jobs that exist within tech companies that would have been spoken to by Natty and by MISA about a couple of weeks ago. So anything in any jobs in those companies, software development, coding, right to the soft skills of sales and business development, and all the things that support businesses like that. So marketing, HR, finance. So these are jobs within clean technology companies. So although the job itself may not necessarily be what you consider to be directly related to the environment, because you're working within an environmental company, it would certainly be a green job. And then for the other group, the environmental service providers, it's kind of a mix of the last two lists. So to find your green job, I've got a couple of recommendations on what you could do. One of them is to get to know the local industry and what the opportunities currently are, and what's going on. And the best way to do that is to sign up for our newsletter, which gives you on a weekly basis. We try to be as consistent as we can with that. News relevant to the local industry, opportunities that are being identified and explored within the industry, and as well job postings, which of course would be of great interest. It's also important to get to know the companies and to get to know them on a one-on-one basis. And you can go to our membership directory, where you can find information on each company, their contact information, but also they're all categorized by the activity that they're into. So you can align that with what you're interested in. If you're interested in renewable energy, then you have a list of the companies that do that in Newfoundland and Labrador. If you're interested in energy efficiency or consulting and engineering, we have it categorized. So then you can see exactly what type of companies are operating in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I'd encourage you, if any pique your interest, it's important to contact them immediately and introduce yourself and do a bit of networking. And networking, although difficult in this COVID-19 environment, it's really critical to finding work. I've found in at least my experience and talking to others, finding work in Newfoundland and Labrador, getting to know people, not necessarily asking for a job at day one, but getting to know them over time and then developing a relationship that at some point you can turn into hopefully a job opportunity. So I can't say how important networking is to your career path. I myself was guilty of not really understanding that when I was younger, and it created challenges for me, that's for sure. This is a really important one, especially for clean tech and green jobs. There's a lot of internship and job grants available that the federal government has made available that subsidize potentially your job within a company for a certain period of time, whether that be 6 months or 12 months or whatever the case may be. So I've given a link to a list of some of the current opportunities here. But if you use this, and when you approach a potential employer and you say, hey, by the way, did you know about the fact that you can subsidize my employment up to, I don't know, 50%? That will, number one, increase the odds they might consider you. And number two, it'll show that you're really proactive and you're really engaged and you're really interested. And I guarantee that many folks would not know of these programs at all. So you're really doing them a favor by kind of introducing them to it. I will say the Connector NL has been really important. So you're obviously engaged with this group if you're participating in this webinar, but NEIA is a participant within the program. So there are times when we get contacted directly to ask, you know, we have such and such individual with this skill set. Do you have any companies that you could connect them with? And we do our absolute best to try and make connections. And we've had a few successes over the past year. And thanks for all the hard work that Connector NL has done in that regard. And finally, and this might be a good lead up into the next presenter, starting a business is always a great way to find yourself a job, create yourself a job. The world is trending towards sustainable business. There's no question about it. And that means there's a lot of opportunity to create your own business and work for yourself. Newfoundland and Labrador needs more clean tech businesses. So I would say if you have an idea, there's a lot of support out there to help you grow your business or investigate at least the possibility of starting your business. If you don't have any ideas, we're a wealth of information on what industry is looking for and what is needed. So don't hesitate to reach out to us to discuss that. A few helpful links here. I will mention the Genesis Center job bank there at the bottom, reiterating what was talked about last week. That's a really important one to keep an eye on. And I do want to also give a shout out there to Natty's job board for those companies that are on the technological side. Though that's kind of the place to be to go find what's out there. And for jobs that are within our membership, that's where contacting our members directly is important because some of them have their own job boards because they are very large companies. But otherwise, our newsletter also will carry jobs as well that they would like to advertise. So that's it for me, Tanya. I think I managed to be sub 10 minutes. I think, I don't know, I forgot to look, but too late now. Too late now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kieran. There was a lot of very valuable resources that you listed there for the participants, so I really appreciate your presentation. And yeah, what a great segue into Ashley's presentation, ending with that entrepreneurial piece. So Ashley, let's get started with your presentation and go from there.
Sure. Here we go. Can we see the slide?
Yep.
Perfect. Hi, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for participating. I greatly appreciate your attendance as well, just to hear what we have to say. So my name is Ashley. I'm the CEO and founder of Edgewise Environmental. And essentially, what I want to talk about today is just kind of my particular route to entrepreneurship in the environmental sector that has since crossed over with a little bit with Cleantech. Kind of what I've done as I've gone through. So everybody's route is going to be different. And whether you choose entrepreneurship or you choose a position within a company or academia, everybody's going to have a different route. So, you know, it's always interesting to learn about how people get to where they go, because I think perhaps when I was younger, I thought it was quite linear, but it is not. And you take different routes and you go different places that lead you to different types of experiences and opportunities. And mine has led me to build a business, which I do on a daily basis for many hours. So there's definitely that hustle and grind that's certainly associated with it. So what I've done here is essentially, instead of watching me talk, I've just kind of put together a few slides of different photos and experiences that I've had through my journey. And it's just because it's perhaps a little more entertaining to look at, because some of them might be a little bit ridiculous. So what would my route be to entrepreneurship? Like I said, it certainly hasn't been a linear route. I always knew that I wanted to be in the environmental sector, particularly marine biology, and even more specific to that, I've always had a passion for marine mammals from a very, very young age. So I was fortunate in that way, in that I I always kind of knew what I wanted to do. In that vein, I sought out volunteer opportunities when I was quite young. So I actually started volunteering in the field of marine mammal husbandry and marine mammal captivity from the time I was 12. And I called up and I had this conversation and I was really keen, and they gave me a shot, and I ended up working there for 12 consecutive years. So it was a good investment on their part, I would like to think. And I learned a lot during my time with that entity, and it was in the field. I learned a lot about cognition and physiology. I learned a lot about character building in terms of working outside with 5 to 8 captive harp seals in the middle of winter in Newfoundland. And it builds a lot of character that way, and it instills in you, is this something that I really want to do? Is this something that I really want to pursue? So if anything, I would highly suggest that anybody watching this presentation and this webinar is that if you're not quite sure, if you have a keen interest in something that you would like to pursue, look for those volunteer opportunities if you're not quite sure, and seek that out, because that way you get to test the waters of that particular industry or sector to find out if it's something that really fits you. And I have had people reach out for positions within Edgewise, for example, and they have offered volunteering for that sole reason, which I think is quite admirable, to seek that out. So that would be a recommendation that I had. So I worked for 12 years, and this was volunteering. This was part-time while I was completing my undergraduate. This was full-time after I had completed. And I did attend Memorial University, and I completed an undergraduate degree in biology with a heavy focus in all of the marine courses. So there's a wonderful facility on the other side of Newfoundland. It's the Bombay Marine Station. They offer field courses, not this year, but in previous years and hopefully years to come. And so I really took advantage of that as well. So I got to do a little bit of field school and learn different sets of skills. And while I was doing that, I was made aware of a position offshore within oil and gas, and it was a Marine Mammal Observer and Seabird Observer. And so I took it upon myself to invest, and I traveled overseas. There wasn't any training offered here at the time locally, and I traveled overseas and I gained those credentials. And I love to travel, and I travel quite often, or I used to, and I sought out those credentials. And so again, I was fortunate enough that after my degree, within a month, I was working offshore. And I still work offshore. Even though I'm the CEO of my own company, I'm very particular now about the contracts that I take. And obviously I can't take long contracts, but it's my passion and I quite love it. I love being on the water. I like working globally with different cultures and different regulations and environmental policy. It's something that I'm quite passionate about, and it continues to build a skill set. And I think that's really important, and I would certainly preach that to anybody during their career, is CPD. So continual professional development is that you should, consistently be looking at building skills or new skills or maintaining skills as well. And just finding those opportunities. And so, to continue to take those opportunities offshore, that's kind of one of my forms of CPD. And while I was offshore, so I've worked in places off of Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia. I've worked off of Africa. I've worked in the Middle East in a variety of environmental roles. So not just marine mammal observation, but environmental management and compliance as a client representative, for example. So there's been a variety of roles that I've held, and I've really understood that gamut of what's required in regards to policy, legislation, and environmental monitoring. And I pursued my master's at Newcastle University, and it was a very particular master's. And so it was a master's in international marine environmental consultancy, and I focused in marine mammal acoustics. And you think, well, that's very niche, and it is. And I've built a business on it because niche things are still very important things. And I sought that out, and I was very particular about the route that I wanted to go. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to invest and go back to university after a little bit of a hiatus for my undergrad, I want to make sure that it's perhaps worth my while. And during that time, during my master's degree, I actually completed perhaps one of the most valuable courses that I have done to date. And that would be a business course that was focused for scientists and engineers. And nobody had ever told me that I couldn't build a business, but perhaps I had always had that idea from being offshore. I could see that perhaps there was a void in the market that I wanted to fill, but I didn't have that skill set. And so I did that course and built up that skill set. And when I moved home after I was living in the UK, I realized I needed another skill set, and that was training. And so I pursued 5 years teaching offshore survival and helicopter ditching, which is a complete deviation from what I had studied. And again, you shouldn't be afraid to make those deviations, because that position, again, was perhaps one of the most valuable that I've held. I've watched a business come up from the ground. They were very new to the province at the time, so I was hired right from the get-go, and built that skill set, working in a very, we'll call it a more stressful environment than perhaps most, and constantly working in the field in very different conditions, constantly outside or you're in a pool. And I had the ability to travel with that position as well. So I was fortunate that way. And then after that, I saw that void in the market of we perhaps needed something more in terms of, I love marine mammal acoustics and seabirds and marine mammal identification. And I recognized that perhaps there was a void in the market for training in regards to that. And so that's really where my business was foundationed. And we've since grown, not only to develop different courses and implement training, but we completed our first research and development project this year in the field of technology. So this is kind of that crossover. There's the opportunities that come up. We have environmental services that we offer clients, and we've been asked for very niche and unique things that we are able to deliver because we are quite niche. And so the opportunities and the ability to grow keep coming, which we're very fortunate for, and we've been fortunate throughout COVID as well. So there is that cross sector between the clean tech industry and us getting into the technology, as well as being in the environmental sector. And I'll kind of finish off that, you know, mentorship is something that I think is very important as you move through your career. And I would advocate that I have been fortunate enough to not only have academic mentors, but I have had business mentors as well that I've been able to reach out to that have lots of experience, that have been able to guide me through some really difficult decisions and circumstances and situations, and they make you quite level-headed. So seek out those mentors that perhaps can guide you as well. And we do have an opportunity within Edgewise right now for a technology strategist, so a digital marketing and technology strategist. And it is an entry-level position, looking for somebody with a background in business, and if you're interested in computer science, for example, and all that's available on our website. So if you'd like to learn more, or if you would like to know more about Edgewise or kind of the path that you perhaps would like to take within this field, you can certainly visit all of those great resources that Kieran made available. You can reach out to myself, or you can visit our website, edgewiseenvironmental.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ashley. Your journey is very interesting and very impressive. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Your slides were way better than mine. Way more.
It's just random photos. So I hope everybody was entertained.
Thank you so much again, Kieran and Ashley, for sharing that with us. So right now we're going to hop right into a question and answer period. So I'm going to pass it over to Shanna. I know we have a few questions that have come in so far, so I'm going to let her take over and take us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. And Kieran and Ashley, thank you so much. A lot of valuable information came from both of you, information that I give to connectees when they come to see us in our offices, because volunteering and networking are so important for starting your career. So yeah, we do have a couple of questions from participants. So the first question is for Kieran. You mentioned a number of green job titles. How do I know what sort of background education and experience is needed to be able to work in that particular job?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link right in the chat room there. There's an organization, it's a national organization called Eco Canada. And right on their website, on that link, they've actually got a number of job titles associated with clean tech and the green economy. And then you can click on those jobs and you can understand what what's entailed in kind of pursuing a career in that regard. That's some really good basic information. I will say that is kind of that's in a Canadian world. If you want to kind of take that information and then try and understand, okay, how does that work in the Newfoundland and Labrador context? Does that job exist here, or what are the opportunities associated with that? Where is my career path specifically if I wanted to stay in Newfoundland and Labrador? By all means, contact me, flip me an email. More than happy to have that discussion with you, just to give you some guidance on kind of what your next step would be. And my next recommendation, to be honest, would be go find somebody, or I can help you connect with somebody who does that job, so that you can understand before you dive right into any program or anything like that, what the job is like. So you can be sure then, when you do invest some time into kind of going down that road, you know that you're going to be doing something that you like and you want to do.
Perfect. Okay. And the second question we got is also for you, Kieran. It's what sort of help do you provide for startups, and what qualifies, I guess, the businesses or the individuals to get that support from your organization?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There's really three things that we can do to help. The first is to provide you with some information on the opportunities that exist. So if you do have an idea, then you can contact us, and we're more than happy to give you our knowledge and what we are aware of, which is we're aware of quite a bit happening in this province, at least. What the opportunities that might be associated with your idea. So that is really good information for you. And if you don't have an idea, then we can give you some ideas of what you might like to pursue. The second thing that we can do to help is to make some connections for you to kind of ground truth, I guess, your idea, because before you start your own business, it's important to understand, are there going to be customers, or are there going to be partners for us as we develop this business? So what we can do is connect you with some important stakeholders just to discuss your idea and get a better idea of whether it is something that may provide some opportunity for you. And lastly, what we can do is connect you with organizations and programming that is out there that can assist you in pursuing your idea. So NEIA itself, we don't have a program per se. We don't have funding to help companies, but what we do have is the knowledge of all of the organizations that do exist that can provide funding or assistance to you. So we can help narrow down what might be the best pathway for you to pursue your idea. So basically, to answer your question far more shortly, we're just an organization to help you pick away at some ideas and point you in the right direction.
Excellent. We have another question. It's what is the basic criteria for getting a job in the field after completing a Master's of Science degree in the field of environmental engineering?
Ashley, I don't know if you want to take a crack at that one. Is this something you experienced?
I've come across a number of people that have a background in environmental engineering, and I don't necessarily think there is any particular basic criteria, because that master's in environmental engineering really opens up a variety of doors to work in a variety of fields. So I really think for the individual, it's just about understanding, would you like to work in mining? Would you like to work in and around, you know, the marine industry, and you can apply for really all of those jobs. Now, each of them is going to come with a different set of credentials, and which you're going to be required to have different other certifications. And I think that's kind of another point to make, is that even after, you know, for myself completing my degrees, I still needed other qualifications to be able to work in the field that I do. And I think that's important for environmental personnel in any fields to understand, is that, you know, for mining, it's probably going to be health and safety related. For the marine industry, certainly health and safety related in terms of, you know, survival, for example, if you're going to be out on the water. So, you know, it's a little bit of a general answer, but I would really kind of pinpoint what the jobs are out there. And one of the things I did when I was looking for a job a number of years ago is I went on these websites, and LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn, have a profile on LinkedIn. It's amazing and has done wonderful things for a number of people, including myself. But I've went and I researched what companies were looking for, and I found common threads. And then I sought out what those common threads were and applied them to myself. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I would actually, that's exactly where I would have went with the answer as well. I guess that educational background is an indication that you're capable of doing a lot of different things, in the same way that an MBA prepares you for a number of different roles, but doesn't necessarily pigeon you all into one thing. Which can make it difficult, because you don't kind of walk right into a career as you would say if you had completed a nursing degree, for example. You become a nurse. But with your background, or with that particular background, there are so many different options. So it really is incumbent on you to decide what it is that you might be most interested in from an industry perspective, perhaps, and then start to dig deeper there. And then you'll really get an idea of with that background, what are the jobs that exist with that. So that's I know that's probably not a direct answer, but that's how it is.
Excellent. So the next question is sort of a two-parter for Kieran. So someone has a green business idea, and they're working with multiple groups through Genesis, MCE, Study and Stay, and MUN, but they don't have any connections with the Newfoundland and Labrador government, and they're wondering, how can NEIA support them?
Yeah, so NEIA is regularly in contact with all levels of government. So there's connections that we can certainly make. I guess my question back would be, why? And are you looking for support? Are you looking for funding? Or are you looking to see if the government would be a customer, for example, for your product or service? So my answer would really depend on which of those you're looking for. But the first step, contact us, and we can certainly connect you either way to the person that you need to talk to.
And the second part to that was, how can they get funds or grants to support the business idea?
Yeah, well, I will say, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your world, but if you have a business idea, and if you have thought that out, and if you have done some research to back up your idea, it is not terribly difficult to find support as long as you have a business plan. So I would say that the first step for you is to make sure that you've thought out, okay, how do I start the business? How do I think that this is going to grow? And have I talked to enough people to make sure that this is a reasonable approach? And if you have all that on paper, then you will probably be able to find, some support, and there are various types of support to help you grow your business. And Ashley, you've done this. So what's your experience with that?
I would completely agree with you, and absolutely would have mentioned the business plan. It's perhaps the most important part when you have an idea that you want to bring to fruition. So having that is very important. And perhaps, if you're going to be going for funding, or if you're looking at any type of institutional money, if you're going to banks or BDC, for example, the financial part of that business plan is going to weigh quite heavily. Depending on who you're approaching. So having a really good idea of how your business is going to grow and a very clear vision of how you want that to be. Understanding that, of course, there are going to be a number of variables, but having that listed out on paper is really important. And then it's just time. And it takes a lot of time to look through all of the programs that are available. And it takes a lot of time to fill out all of the applications as well. And so I would say, you know, that if you're really married to the idea and you believe in it strongly, it's that business plan, and then essentially making that your 9-to-5 job, filling out those applications.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, if you've heard this term business plan and you don't know what that means, then just walk it back a few steps. And there's people and organizations that can help you build that business plan as well. So basically, no matter where you are in your thought process, as an organization, we can at least point you in the right direction and say, okay, you should start from step 2 out of 40 and move along from there. Or maybe you're at step 40 already and we just say, you know more than we do.
Excellent. So the next question is asking about any upcoming personal or professional development activities or workshops that are being hosted by NEIA, but also, Ashley, if you know of any as well that might be happening that would be beneficial for people looking to get into the industry.
I'll give this to you, Kieran, first, and then I'll add.
Yeah, I would say that there's nothing concretely on the schedule right now, but I hope within a couple of weeks, we're going to have a wide variety of different online opportunities to learn more about what Cleantech means in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I think those will be of great interest. So I would say stay tuned and sign up for our newsletter. Do it.
It's quite handy. And I would just add to that I've been constantly attending webinars, and you know, for example, the IMARES, so the International. It's the Institute of Marine Engineering, Science, and Technology. I'll put the link in the chat. They currently have a 2-week-long conference running with different sub-webinars happening all the time in a variety of fields that are primarily marine related. But of course, you know, and environmental and marine tend to go hand in hand. So if that's your thing or something that you think you'd be interested in, that's currently ongoing.
Excellent. So there's a couple of questions that are somewhat similar, asking about where to find jobs and how to find the entry-level jobs in environmental fields, but also are there any environmental job opportunities for Masters of Science in Oil and Gas Engineering? Yeah,
well, I think, you know, to be quite frank, right now is a difficult time for the oil and gas industry. That might be more difficult now than it was 4 months ago. And I see a question there as well. I think the best way, and we can't reiterate this enough, the best way to find yourself in a career and in a job is to get yourself out there as much as you can. Make as many connections as you possibly can. Try and find someone that you can talk to on a regular basis who works in the industry, who can give you advice and make contacts for you. Finding a job, as those, you know, on this webinar know, finding a job is a job, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It's rare that things happen fast for anybody. So you just got to keep plugging away, keep meeting people, keep throwing yourself out there. Right now, LinkedIn is obviously a good way to do that. There may be some, like, Ashley, I don't know, as an employer, now you're kind of starting to be an employer, you're starting from, you know, what would you say, like, what do you think are some ways that people could continue to kind of meet and talk to people?
I certainly think LinkedIn is a great tool. Sending out invitations or just learning about other people's backgrounds. There are a number of networking sessions, and perhaps even though we're discussing NL, think global. Because you can connect globally and make those connections, and how many of those, for at least in my experience, have fed back to Newfoundland, because we are everywhere. And so it's not that big of a world, especially when we're dealing with a digital one. So seek out those opportunities in terms of networking in a variety of capacities. And if I may add to that, don't be afraid to really stretch some of your different skill sets. So I had mentioned in my presentation, you know, I deviated from marine biology and mammalogy, and I got into aviation and offshore survival and ditching and training to stretch that thread of what I wanted to build. So don't be afraid to do that in those skill sets, because they build skills in and to themselves that can lead to other opportunities. And so really kind of sit down with yourself and list out what are your academic skills, what skills have you learned perhaps from extracurricular or certifications, and kind of really look and build yourself a list of a wider, perhaps cast a wider net if you can.
Now, I would just add, persistence is really important. So if you, or if anyone happens to reach out to me and it happens to be a bad day, it happens to be a particularly busy week or a particularly busy couple of weeks for me, it may not be a note that I get to, or it may be something that I meant to address, but it just has fallen down on my email list. So don't hesitate to write back and say, hey, listen, I haven't heard from you in a while, or you never answer my email. You know what? I think Ashley, I can probably speak for Ashley. Everyone's really busy in their jobs. I think generally people are willing and want to help. It's just a matter of trying to find the time. So don't hesitate to bug people.
Excellent. Okay, so the next question is for Ashley. One of the participants has a background in marine biology, but none in business. So you've sort of touched on this, but as an entrepreneur, what would you advise this participant to learn in order to run their business? And do you think an MBA is essential?
No, I don't think an MBA is essential, but I certainly would recommend building that skill set. So for example, the Gardner Center through MUN offers a great program of business essentials for non-business oriented personnel, such as, you know, like myself. I didn't come from a business degree. And there's a variety of tools online, as well as certifications that you can receive. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is that an MBA is not essential, but to build those skills in marketing, business development, organization is essential. If you're not organized, it can all fall apart very quickly. And financial management, because a lot of people, when they start out a business, they're doing their own financial management. I sought out, the first two things I sought out after I incorporated my business was a lawyer and an accountant. And I sought out advice because those are the two things that I wanted to make sure I got correct from the beginning. So that would be my advice to this person, is those skills. Look for those skills.
Excellent. And now there's a question from one of the participants who's been working in the E&P of oil and gas for 10 years in Nigeria. And they would like to know if they would need to take a diploma in a Canadian school to transition to environmental jobs.
I think that would be very dependent on the specific situation and the specific background, educational background and experience of an individual. I think one of the things you could do there would be to talk to a recruiting agency who might be able to give you some good information on typically these are the expectations of somebody looking for this kind of a job. So maybe perhaps I can find a link for some companies that might be able to help you with that.
Excellent. All right. Are there any final questions? We have a couple minutes left before we have to clue up here today. So I'll just wait a second to see if any final questions come in.
Can we put up the picture of Ashley putting out the fire again with the hose? That was pretty good. That'd be a good way to end the webinar, I think.
Yeah, that one was that was like an action shot,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
I need more action shots in my presentations.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you, Kieran and Ashley, again, so much. You provided a lot of information to a lot of participants who had a lot of questions for you guys today. So it's great. It's great to see that engagement, and I hope that the participants learned a lot. I certainly did. So thank you again. And is there anything last things you need to say or wanted to say to anyone?
If I may, for anybody that's watching that is currently looking for a position and feels frustrated, I've been there and I know what that feels like. I'm sure we all have. Perseverance is key. We're living in a very different world right now where it's online and it's digital. So if you are somebody with a business idea, or you are somebody that is just getting really frustrated of, you have this educational background and you're not finding those positions, just keep going. Do those exercises. Make sure you have a really good LinkedIn profile, and persevere. And we've been there, and we know what you're going through, and we offer support.
Yeah, I would echo that. I've certainly been there, but eventually, with hard work, you will find yourself where you want to be.
Excellent. All right. If anyone has any questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to myself or Ashley from Connector NL, or to Tanya with TeamGrowNL, and we'll try to get your information to the right people. Thanks again, everyone, for participating, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.